big storyline from this past week was George Kliavkoff, the commissioner of the Pac-12, on campus at SMU to watch a basketball game. Well, if you know anything about commissioners of different conferences visiting specific programs, it's really because they're only looking to poach those teams. And listen, the Pac-12 is in a really interesting spot, right? The competition level took a big step forward last year. USC, Oregon looked really good. It feels like, Colorado could be on the verge of something special with Dion. The Arizona schools are certainly trending in the right direction. Washington had a great year. And then there was Oregon State, who finished in the top 25. So competition-wise, the Pac-12 has ascended out of the cellar, at least for the time being.
Right.
The main issue, though, is that the Pac-12 has fallen so far behind the other conferences as far as the arms race that is the media rights deals and TV packages, that with USC and UCLA leaving for the greener pastures of the Big Ten, there's a power vacuum for them to fill. While SMU and San Diego State, who are the two schools that are rumored to be moving towards a Pac-12 acquisition, are not powerhouse programs, it probably makes sense for the Pac-12 to go in this direction simply for a revenue spot. Garrett, they're a couple months late on signing a new media rights deal.
Yeah, well, and the big thing for them is, you talked about it with USC and UCLA leaving. There's going to be a lot of eyeballs leaving, and that's already the Pac-12's issue. It's not the competition. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the competition level it's been fine. It's not like, these were the worst teams ever. There were some, kind of bad teams there for a little while, but, it's not like Oregon was ever a slouch. It's not like Utah hasn't been really solid for the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they haven't had these good teams. But I think the issue is nobody's watching, because a lot of their games get played super, super late. And it's convenient for their schedule, but for the majority of the rest of college football watchers, these games kick off at 10 o'clock at night, right? Or 11 o'clock at night if you're all the way on the East Coast. And so,
Mm-hmm.
it's just really hard for a lot of people to watch these games. Now, I'm not saying that they need to, bend their scheduling to the people on the East Coast. I'm not saying that at all. But I do think that when you're thinking about a media rights deal, when you're thinking about keeping up in this current climate, you need to find ways to get more eyeballs on TVs. And I think both moving a little bit further east and getting a team like an SMU, if that's the route that they're going to go, I think that'll help, because you can start playing those games at a normal sort of 11 o'clock, noon kickoff in sort of these more central time zones for a lot of the teams to get a lot more exposure, right? You'll see people say, oh, look, Oregon State. I haven't watched an Oregon State game ever, but because they're playing a game in Dallas, I'm going to watch an Oregon State game, and then maybe you're a little bit more interested, and that gets the ball rolling,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whereas, if you stay that far out on the West Coast, it will be hard to get eyeballs, and that's the only thing that these TV deals are about. It's just about getting eyeballs on TVs and being able to put sponsors on and everything else. And so when I think about these media deals, I think this is kind of a smart move to move out this direction. But also, SMU's got a really solid social media presence. And I think being able to increase your social media presence, to increase what's going on, on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube, anything like that, being able to increase the people who are seeing your content, who are interested in your content, reminding people to watch the game, I think that's going to go a long way in helping them sort of sustain some success in this new era of college football. They certainly have the teams and the talent to do it. It's just going to be about figuring out how to get people to watch their games.
Well, and I think, the status quo is not rosy on the media rights front. The Pac-12 is dead last when it comes to revenue sharing. They distribute about $21 million to each of their member schools. That's dead last. The SEC is handing out nearly $50 million a year to its member schools. Even the Big 12 is over 30 a year. So for the Pac-12 to be losing, like you said, kind of the two biggest programs in the best market as far as USC and UCLA to the Big Ten, that is millions of eyeballs that are going to be going east to the Big Ten conference. The other issue has been the quality of the Pac-12 content. They've been
Mm-hmm.
in an ESPN agreement, but oftentimes, if you were an Oregon fan, you found this out the last 2 years, sometimes you didn't even get an HD stream of your
Yep.
game. Even if it was on ESPN2, it looked like it was rendering it, 480 frames a second. It was
Mm-hmm.
so poor in the quality Not to mention some of the broadcasters that you had to listen to, and I'm sorry about that, Oregon fans. But the point was that whether it was ESPN or the
Yeah.
Pac-12 or whoever was to blame, somebody dropped the ball, and the Pac-12 is lagged so far behind that now, as they need to sign a new media rights deal and are the last Power Five conference to really kind of jump on this bandwagon, they've got to find something that is new, something that's unique, and something that's going to help propel them forward. Now, SMU and San Diego State would be two relatively new markets, especially the Southwest and Texas going over to the Pac-12 with SMU. You'd get the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. There's not a ton of SMU fans just because it's a very small, very expensive private school. But at least for us, we didn't go to SMU, but we all live fairly close to it. So we were
Mhm.
SMU season ticket holders last year, right? We watched
Yeah.
SMU on ESPN on TV when we weren't at the games. I would tune in, assuming I had whatever streaming service they're going to go with. I would tune in to watch SMU play Pac-12 conference games on the West Coast. I would stay up to do that. And so from that sense, they would succeed in bringing a new audience like us into their conference footprint. The issue is, where do they go for their new media rights package? Is it with ESPN? Is it with Fox? I don't think it would be Fox. Fox certainly seems to have its eyes on kind of the two power conferences in the SEC and the Big Ten. And a lot of people assume that it's going to be kind of a Tokyo showdown eventually when you have the Fox conference and the ESPN conference dueling 5-10 years down the line. So for the Pac-12, do you go to a streaming service like Apple TV? Do you do something like a YouTube TV where you have to have a certain bundle in order to watch the games? It's not like that's worked out with the Pac-12 network so far. Their ratings have been abysmal.
Yeah, I mean, I think the streaming option is a really good option for them if they can't get some kind of deal. Because when you think about the disparity you were talking about with not having HD streams and some of that stuff, it's not like they didn't have a good deal. They were with ESPN. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like they didn't have the infrastructure available. It's just they didn't believe that that was worth their time or something. Like, I don't know what it was, but it was just for some reason ESPN's not sending their best to the Pac-12, and so I think you have to be, if you're the Pac-12, for me, I would want to be somebody's darling, right? I'd want to be, let's go over to a YouTube TV or an Apple TV, like you said, and let's go be their darling. Let's be the games that, we play these games, and it's the big tile, the first thing when you click on, right? It just says Oregon State versus Arizona, right? And it's the big tile. You click on that one. It's the one that they promote all week. And they get a chance to kind of do that. I do think that makes sense, especially with so many people, cutting the cord and moving on to streaming devices. YouTube TV is, I think, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, streaming provider at the moment. Or if they're not the biggest, they certainly have the ability to become the biggest and to dominate the space. So why not go to them and say, hey, we'll put our games exclusively on your network so that people have to buy YouTube TV to do it. Most people are going to buy it anyways if they're going to get, only their sports. Right, because I know for me personally, I don't watch a whole lot of other TV besides sports, right? So if it's a YouTube TV option, I'd probably buy that and just say, okay, well, I still get ESPN, I still get Fox, I can still get the channels I want to get. So why don't I get YouTube TV and also get the Pac-12 with that? So I think some of the exclusivity could work for them, even if the quality of the product doesn't necessarily increase in the short term, right? Even if the streams don't get better, the actual campuses maybe they don't do stadium renovations or improvements as quickly as they like to because they don't have the money available from the TV deal. I still think that would be a great option for them because then they get to be someone's darling and they get to kind of get together with one of these streaming providers and say, hey, let's come up with a plan together to make this the best product possible. I think that's a really good option as a way forward for them.
Gracious, how about